Senator Peters, thank you for your indulgence. Very much appreciated. But so happy to have you here because of your role in the Homeland Security Committee and this committee too. So thanks for your leadership.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's great to be here, and thank you to each of our witnesses for your testimony here today. An incredibly important issue. Mr. Little, you have been testifying here today, and thank you for your very detailed testimony and the work that you have engaged in to combat the extremely concerning incident that occurred at CTAC. And although this hearing has been focused on cybersecurity and aviation, it certainly shows that this attack also highlights, I think, other cybersecurity attacks, including our ports, our maritime ports. Michigan is the home to 33 active cargo ports that ship or receive cargo. They handle 51 million tons of cargo, over $4 billion annually. And I think we all agree it's imperative that the necessary cybersecurity resilience practices are utilized at all critical infrastructure, including our ports. That's why I'm introducing the Protecting Investments in Our Ports with Senator Cornyn to ensure that ports receive digital infrastructure grants from the Port Infrastructure Development Program and have cybersecurity procedures in place to protect their digital projects. So, Mr. Little, in your testimony, you mentioned how this attack impacted some of the maritime assets with the Port of Seattle. So could you discuss the added complication of this attack being carried out against both aviation and maritime operations, and how these systems basically being interconnected may have impacted your response? That would be helpful.
Yes, in an environment where it's just an airport environment, it's limited maybe to a local area network. With our infrastructure, because we also have the maritime operations, we have a more wide area network, or some may consider it a metropolitan area network that's spread across multiple facilities. So that made it more complicated. One of the good things is that we have an information technology and information security department that has responsibility for both the maritime institution as well as the aviation institution as well. So it's more complicated to manage because of the various different locations that falls under that responsibility. However, as I mentioned earlier, the networks are segmented. So some of the services at Maritime Institute was impacted. For example, recreational boating, fishing, those were impacted, but cruise were not. And the cargo operation was not impacted as well.
Mm-hmm. Very good, thank you. Well, I think we all agree that crafting strong and effective cybersecurity requirements is a task that federal agencies must undertake to ensure safety and security of our critical infrastructure. And I certainly appreciate the very detailed discussion that we've had here and my colleagues have had on the need to maximize the amount of cybersecurity teams that they spent on actual security versus compliance, which has been an issue. We need to streamline those requirements. And I have really good news. It's good to come to a committee hearing with good news. I introduced a bill with Senator Langford, the Streamlining Federal Cybersecurity Regulations Act, which is attempts to try to make compliance with multiple regulatory agencies a whole lot easier. And I would certainly welcome my colleagues on this committee to join me in this bill. And Mr. Reynolds, thank you for your support of this bill and your testimony, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on that issue. Mr. Brayo, something we've seen happens after major cyber incidents is that other bad actors, including cybercrime groups, use the originating cyber attack to target Americans and commit fraud. For example, in your testimony, you discussed bad actors launching phishing attacks after the recent CrowdStrike incident to defraud victims. These groups, as you well know, take millions of dollars of hard-earned money from honest folks. And question for you is, what do you recommend for how we could work to prevent and respond to these post-attack fraud incidents? What are your top recommendations?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Number one, in the aviation sector, consumers don't have any control over when these cybersecurity events happen. All they see is the downstream impact of it, the missed flights, the lost airline miles. And so I think it's very important that Congress and DOT consider policies that will help consumers recover when incidents that are harming them through no fault of their own happen. That's why in our testimony we have called for Congress to codify DOT's authority to implement delay compensation regulations, which they have a rulemaking teed up for this January, as well as requiring that stolen airline miles have the same protection that stolen money has when a scammer gets a hold of my credit or debit card and uses it to run up a bunch of charges. We think that when those miles are lost, that's money that belonged to consumers that they've lost through no fault of their own, and that the airline should be required to compensate them for that.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, again, for all your work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Again, thank you, Senator Peters.